All right, everybody. Thank you so much for joining the Detroit Hustle podcast with me, your host, Melinda B. Powers. Today, we are going to be talking to one of my favorite people. He is a spiritual leader of mine personally. I've attended his church. He's so awesome. And he just happens to be from the best city on earth, Detroit, Michigan. Bishop George Davis. Welcome, Bishop. How are you?
Thank you. I'm doing well, Melinda. Good to be here with you.
Awesome. Thank you. So I'm going to let you introduce yourself to the audience. Some people might know you, some people might not. So just give us a quick 5 to 10 minute intro. You can talk about your neighborhood, your schools you came from, and just what got you started as a Detroit native.
Born and raised in Detroit. Grew up on the east side of Detroit off of Van Dyke, in the Van Dyke and 6 Mile area on a street called Woodlawn. In the neighborhood there that if you drive down the street today, it doesn't look quite the same as it did when I grew up here. But grew up in that area, went to A.L. Holmes Elementary, was slated to go to Burroughs Middle School. I went there, I think, for 1 year, and then my family moved out of state and then came back for high school and went to the best high school in Detroit, Cass Technical High School.
Woo, woo, woo. Yes, that's right. You heard it here.
Graduated there many moons ago in 1988, and then stayed with the green and white and went to Michigan State University. And, met my wife there at Michigan State, and it was through meeting her that I came back home to Detroit and went to visit her church, which was Word of Faith Christian Center with Bishop Keith Butler there in Detroit. And my life got radically changed there at Word of Faith, and just kind of started me on this journey of pursuing God's purpose for my life. I was actually a mechanical engineering student at Michigan State and worked for General Motors, helping to design cars. And from there, just recognized that wasn't it. I loved it, but there was more to it. So I went to Bible school at Word of Faith School of Ministry, and really was kind of going there just to get God off my back and give me some peace and let me sleep at night. And expecting that I would graduate in 2 years and go right back to Michigan State, but ended up getting hired full-time on staff. And 3 years later, launched out from Detroit at the young age of 26 to come to Jacksonville, Florida, 800-something miles away to start a church. And didn't know anybody here in Jacksonville, but had 12 people pack up with me from Detroit to move to Jacksonville and get jobs. And we started handing out some flyers. And now 20 plus years later, we have 11 churches 9 churches in the United States, 5 of them here in Florida, a few of them more up the East Coast, one on the West Coast in Houston, Texas, and then 2 churches in Peru, all under the banner of Impact Church. So that's my story. That's my journey. Been married for 25 years. It'll be 26 years in July. And
congratulations.
Thank you. Have 3 children that I adore. Most of the time I adore them. They're at those teenage years now, so I love them. I love them all the time. I always like them. But have one daughter who just graduated high school, but all my roots tied back to Detroit. And people know me for that. I'm always wearing Detroit gear of some sort, Detroit T-shirts, hats, because I love my city and love my hometown.
Yes, you do. And that's why you're the perfect guest. So I'm so glad that you accepted the invitation, because you definitely were on the top of the list. So I just want to kind of go back a little bit, because I'm a little spoiled because I know a lot of your story, but the people listening don't. So I want to kind of fill in some gaps. And I also want to inject a little bit of my experience in knowing you and your journey. One of the things that was so interesting, I joined your church here in Jacksonville, Florida. Well, that was I visited for the first time in 2010. At that time, I had just moved here from Tallahassee. I've lived in Florida for a long time, but not in Jacksonville proper. And I had gone through a long stretch where I hadn't been connected to a church home. And at that time, it was time to seek one. And I didn't have a clue of where to go. So I kind of ended up in Impact, which was Faith Christian Center at the time, kind of by accident. Well, actually, my mother was a Word of Faith member in Detroit. And she said, well, I think Word of Faith has a church down there, so go check that out first. So it was the first stop, but it kind of became the default. When there wasn't a new place to visit, I always found myself coming back there. But and the funny thing is, a big part of what I loved about being there was that you were so hometown. It was like being at home. So having that piece of home away, so far away from home, was really, really cool. And it really gave me a lot of comfort. So I just want to thank you for that. It got me through some really rough times, and you've just been really an amazing role model. I don't know if you realize that or not when it comes to me, but I really do appreciate you and your journey and how it's gotten you to where you are.
Yeah, thank you for that. It's been an honor.
No problem, no problem. So, as far as your journey, you left out a couple of things. So I want to kind of go back. You're a bit of a singer, and you've been singing for quite a while, I understand. So, talk a little bit about that, because I know that started in Detroit, right?
Yeah, well, I mean, I grew up as a kid at Greater Mount Carmel Missionary Baptist Church over on Helen and Mack with
Okay.
Reverend J.D. Montgomery.
Mm.
So as a little kid, started singing in the children's choir there, and even directing the choir as a little kid, and had been in church my entire life. I
Mm-hmm.
can't remember a time or season where I wasn't in church. Wasn't always living the way that I should, but had always been attending church, going to church. And when I finally got to high school, at Cass Tech had at that time one of the best gospel choirs in the city, and it was all student led. And it was through that student choir that I really finally started getting turned on and for real committed to the things of God. And out of that, it was a group of guys that we formed a singing group called All for Christ. And there was 4 of us initially, and then there were 2 or 3 others that got added to be a part of the group as well. And that really became the foundation, honestly, for my full-fledged commitment to Christ. That All for Christ group, and then the Cass Tech Gospel Choir really kind of kept me. If you add in commission and the whinings on my radio,
Yes.
because that was it. Because for me, the Amazing Grace and some of the hymns that we sang at church just wasn't doing it. But
Mm-hmm.
being with a group of young guys that were committed to Christ, and then being with a group of teenagers at high school that were all sold out for Christ, or at least pressing in the direction of Christ, it really helped me to stay grounded and stay close to the things of God. And we started singing at Cass Tech, and we started doing engagements outside. We did a little recording in the studio for a while. We all left and went to school. The majority of us went to Michigan State, so we still stayed together and kind of traveled around Michigan and Ohio doing some singing engagements and things like that. And then when I made it to Word of Faith, I still continued to sing there in the choir and the praise team. And when I moved here to Jacksonville, Florida to start the church here, kind of got away from it, just being up every week speaking and all the responsibilities of starting the church just kind of got me away from it. And then about 7 years ago, I had always said I was going to record. I was going to slow down long enough to put a project together. And so I finally did in 2014, slowed down and recorded a project. And my goal was just to get these songs out of my heart so I could finally say I did it. And
Mm-hmm.
did that, and it actually turned out really well, a lot better than I even thought it would. And my engineer convinced me to take one of the songs to the radio, and we did. And there's a song called Morning Time, and ended up becoming a Billboard gospel hit. They call it, to his top 30 on the Billboard gospel charts, and
Mm-hmm.
surprised me. But I was happy about that, and have done a few more things with it, and really haven't decided if I'm going to do anything else in the singing world. I mean, I'm not a singer. I could sing a little bit and enjoy it, have fun with it, but that was a great project to be able to put forth.
Definitely. I mean, it was really cool to watch that unfold. I mean, because you do sometimes sing during services as well. So it wasn't a huge surprise to see that happen, but to see you do something and execute it so professionally, and it just knowing that you had the drive and the ambition to try something else while doing all the other things you're doing, that was very inspiring as well, I must say. But you also are a writer. You neglected to mention that. So tell us a little bit more about your endeavors being an author.
Well, same with the music. I just believe that the richest place, and I've heard it said before, the richest place on planet Earth is a graveyard. Because a lot of people
Mm,
die with all types of dreams and things in their heart that they just never got around to doing, never slowed down enough to do, or just never had the courage to step out and try. I mean, I've succeeded in a lot of things, but I've failed probably at more things than I've tried. And I've succeeded. I think that's part of what allows you to have some measure of success, is being willing to step out and try some things that you may or may not be as comfortable with. And it was that way with the album. It took me so long to finally do it because I, kept trying to figure out the right way to do it. And I'm a bit of a perfectionist, and sometimes you can overanalyze and overplan and end up getting nothing done. So I finally decided with the music recording to just step out and do it. And the same thing with the books. When you stand in front of a group of people, thousands of people every week to speak, and you're helping to encourage other people, those messages are great on Sundays, but what happens on Monday, and what happens, 6 months from now when that person shows up for the first time and wasn't here when you gave that great message that helped so many people. So one of the things I endeavored to do was to memorialize some of it by putting together some books and writing some books. And so I have 4 books that I've written. The first one was a little small book called Holy Ghost Buoyancy, Bounce Back Ability. And this talks about the resilience that all of us have to have. I don't care who you are, no matter how great you do things or how many mistakes you make, there are going to be some challenges that come against all of us. And the goal that life tries to bring against us is to stop us and make us quit, get us depressed and discouraged, especially when you start approaching those milestone birthdays, 30 and 40
and
and 50.
you're speaking to me. I'll be 40 in about 6 months.
But, there's a tendency to start looking back and you start questioning, how much have I accomplished? Am I as far along as I thought I would be at this age? And if you don't watch it, it can become real easy to get discouraged and even start taking some steps backwards. And so Holy Ghost Buoyancy was written just to remind people that no matter where you are on this journey called life, there's something on the inside of you that no matter how hard life comes at you, you will still bounce back as long as you're in Christ. And then I wrote a second book called Lord Save Me From Me, because I am convinced that the devil is not my biggest problem. The people next door and around the corner are my biggest problem. I'm my biggest problem. And if I learn how to conquer this enemy inside of me that has a tendency to wander off course and drift into areas that I know I shouldn't drift into, and if I can learn how to conquer the one on the inside of me, then everything else on the outside is a whole lot easier. And so that book was written to help people just kind of fight that internal battle and learn how to submit to the will of God and submit to the righteousness and the direction that we have in our hearts, and not keep giving in to some of the things that can pull us off course. The third book that I wrote is probably my favorite. It's the largest of them. It's called Passing the Test of Life. Mm-hmm. And I just believe that all of us have different tests that we face in life. And it could be something as simple as being offended. And every time we get offended, we pack up and move and leave a good relationship, leave a good friendship, leave a good job, leave a good church, to go and seek, the greener pastures elsewhere. And if we never slow down long enough to deal with the root on the inside as to why we keep getting offended, then we're going to end up seeing those same circumstances again, just in a different environment. And until we learn how to pass that test, we keep on taking it.
Right.
And so I laid out a number of different tests that I just think are common to all of us, no matter where you are in life and what your status is. And it's important to allow God to help us learn how to pass those tests so we can start moving forward and not just stay stuck in the same place. And then the last book I wrote a few years ago was one called The Scandal of Grace. And it's really just a little devotional that just helps people to understand that, even in this world of religion where, most people, when they think of church, they think of a whole bunch of rules and regulations. I don't want to go to church. I know I'm not living right. I'm not doing this right. And the reality is God loves us right where we are. And the whole reason why he sent Christ was to redeem us and to give us the opportunity to come to him just like we are. And so the Scandal of Grace really is just a 21-day devotional that just walks you through helping to reprogram your internal that internal voice that is always drifting toward negativity, always drifting toward condemnation, and really start to hear just how much God loves us and how much he wants to propel you on to victory. So done a little bit of writing, done a little bit on the music side, but my greatest joy is honestly just loving people where they are, starting with my family and then extending out there to other people that are part of my life.
Well, I can say as an observer, you've done an excellent job in that, in my opinion. Do you have any projects that are in the works? Any more books coming? Anything exciting coming down the pipe we could be looking for?
Yep, I'm actually working on a family book. It's actually been one that it's been in the works actually before I started all the other ones, but I just felt like I needed to get enough examples under my belt, enough experience under my belt. And my wife and I are actually going to co-author a book about the family, just helping people. I think in the times that we live right now, families are under such attack. The fabric of a society always starts with the family. So because families are under such attack, we'll just give people some hope, help people to realize that it doesn't have to be as bad as it seems on the media, and you don't have to fail at raising your children. It is work to raise children. It is work to be married and stay married. It's work to be happy as a single person.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's just important to be able to give people some hope and some direction. You know, in the midst of darkness, one of the best things somebody can do is just turn on a light. It doesn't have to be a big bright light. Even just a little flashlight is helpful to be able to see the way out of the darkness. And we live in such a dark time right now that we want to be able to give some people some hope with an understanding that family life does not have to be something that you fail at. You can actually win at it.
That's amazing. And then just to backtrack, I think you neglected to mention the title of your album, which is Captured by Your Love. And where can people find that if they're looking for some good inspirational music?
Yep. The title of the album is Captured by Your Love, and it's available on all digital outlets. So it's available iTunes, what was formerly iTunes, Apple Music.
Right.
It's available on Google Music, streaming music as well. Captured by Your Love, and a lot of radio stations around the country are still playing. I get calls and social media messages all the time from people in California, Alaska, Michigan, Florida, other places that are still hearing some of the songs from the album being played online. But if anyone actually wants to buy a copy or listen to a copy, whatever digital outlet you're on, you can pull up George Davis or Captured by Your Love, and it should come up.
Awesome. And then as far as your journey as a bishop and pastor, are there any new endeavors with the church that people can be looking for? Any new church plantings or projects that are on the pipe, coming down the pipe?
Yeah, well, here in Jacksonville, we purchased a large building a couple years ago over at Regency Square Mall. It used to be a Belk department store, and we're actually getting ready to start construction on that in about 2 months.
Okay.
And that'll take us about 12 months to finish that one off. And then we're from there going to be planning some other campuses as well. We have the 11 churches now, and our plan is to kind of head up the East Coast. I really believe that's my assignment, is to go up the East Coast to some of the places in North and South Carolina, some other places right there in Georgia, and all the way up through Virginia. So I'll be on the lookout for some other impact churches that will join the fight with these other great churches out here to help point people in the direction of Christ.
Awesome. And if people are not in an area where there's an impact church, they can watch online, correct?
Yeah, we actually are available online. I mean, and our online community has actually gotten larger than the thousands of folks that are sitting in the auditorium. Every Sunday on both Facebook, we stream through Facebook Live, but also through our website, which is weareimpact.com. Weareimpact.com. They can watch our live stream there, go back and watch archived messages from previous weeks and previous months. And it's just some good content there. I don't say it just because it's me doing the speaking, but I think it's some good content. I really have endeavored the entire time I've been in ministry, especially these last 5 years or so, to just be real transparent, real authentic. I think people are just kind of fed up with thinking that the people on stage or in the pulpit get it right all the time, and they're the only ones messing up. I like people to know that, no, I don't have any special grace or special gifting to live it out. I have to live it out every day like the next person. And some days I do amazingly well, and some days I feel like I'm falling flat on my face. But I think in that process, in that journey, we grow closer to Christ. And if we learn how to be honest enough, it helps us grow closer to each other. One of the things that helps relationships is when we can be transparent and open and authentic and honest with each other, and help each other along this journey. So yeah, people can definitely stream with us at weareimpact.com, and also be able to go back and watch some previous messages as well.
All right, awesome. So now we're going to get to the more Detroit-centric part of the podcast.
Let's go.
And so as far as your roots, you talked about where you started. In your experience, what makes the D so special? And this can be in reference to any opportunities that you received from being from there, or acknowledging certain people or places or experiences that really greatly influenced you on this journey that you've been on.
Well, I think it's, the first book that I mentioned that I wrote, Holy Ghost Buoyancy. I mean, that could be the theme song of Detroit. Detroit just has this bounce back ability. Even right now with all the struggles that our city has gone through over the last, 10, 15 years or so, you just still see such a sense of optimism. Detroit is coming back. I mean, you can see it now as you drive downtown, and then as some neighborhoods are starting to come back. Mm-hmm. Detroit will rise again. Like that phoenix coming from the ashes, it will rise again. And I think that's the one thing that I've just learned. There's a tenacity about Detroiters, and you can see it when you meet somebody from the D. There's just a certain swag, that the whole Detroit versus everybody.
Yeah.
Who we are. And it's funny because you walk around now and you see people have copied the whole theme, and you got Chicago versus everybody and Alabama versus everybody. All these other folks that have come in but we know where it started. It started with the D, Detroit versus everybody. But that's kind of our motto. That when nobody else is believing in us, nobody else is in our corner, Detroiters are. Living here in Jacksonville, it's amazing because the Jacksonville has a football team, the Jacksonville Jaguars. And I'm amazed, Jacksonville is a transient city. So there's lots of Navy people that have moved here, lots of folks that just moved here to head south, get out of colder weather. But there are a lot of people here that are not from here. So I understand those people maybe not being Jaguar fans initially. But it blows my mind to see how many people are born and raised in Jacksonville, have never even traveled out of the city much, and are not fans of the local team. And I have this argument in the barbershop all the time that if you're from the D, you root for everything. I mean, I'm a Detroit Tigers fan. I'm a Pistons fan. I'm a Lions fan. I'm a Red Wings fan. I told him if we had a ping pong team in Detroit, I'd be rooting for that ping pong team. And I think that's just the heart of our city.
Yeah.
And I think when you grow up that way, there's a loyalty that comes from Detroit that we stick together. We don't abandon each other in the tough times. We stick together. And I think that's the resilience that I learned. So when I went to college, I pledged a fraternity in college, and it probably is because it reminded me of being on the East Side. If you grew up on my street, Woodlawn, and anybody from Edgewood or the other streets around there, we might fight each other, but we wouldn't let anybody from another street fight us. And that's how it is in Detroit. We may beef with each other, but you're not gonna come in from another city and try to down one of us.
Right.
So just having that same mentality has actually been the philosophy that I have pastored a church with. I mean, my staff will tell you that I'm gangster loyal when it comes to my team. I'll go to the end of the earth for my team. And a lot of that, the philosophy that I operate my life by, that I run ministry by, I have some other business endeavors outside of ministry. I run those all with that same philosophy from the D, that even when it looks bad, I'll be back. I'll rise again. I'm not giving up at the first sign of trouble. And for those that are with me, I'll be with you to the end.
That's awesome. And that just totally embodies the spirit of this podcast. And many people have hit that same sentiment from different angles, but it keeps coming back time and time again. So thank you so much for your contribution to that. And then last, but definitely not least, and in my opinion, the most fun, this is what I call the Fab Five segment. Basically, a play off of the old U of M team. I know you're not a fan, but
I actually love the Fab Five, though.
Right. I think we all kind of did. So I'm going to ask you 5 questions about your favorite Detroit things. Each one is going to be a different kind of criteria or genre. And so we're going to just go ahead and get started. So number 1, what is your favorite Detroit place or landmark?
Belle Isle.
Yes.
There's nothing like it. I mean, no matter where else you go, where else do you have an island sitting right in the middle of your city? And growing up as a kid, before they redid Belle Isle, we used to come up Grand Boulevard to get to Belle Isle, and there was a little tunnel that you go under to go under. You didn't have to wait in line to go across Jefferson. There was a tunnel that went underneath Jefferson. And I remember as a kid feeling like we're going to another country, man, because we're going under this tunnel and come up on the other side, and you're right there at Belle Isle, and the fountain changing colors, and riding through Belle Isle, and people just hanging out. Growing up as a kid, they had the giant slide there that you could come down and skin up all your legs and arms, but you're just happy to get up and go do it again because it's what we did. Right. So definitely my favorite landmark would be Belle Isle.
Okay. Number 2. Oh, I hear a little echo there. We're going to overlook it.
Okay.
Number 2, your favorite restaurant or dish, past or current.
Ooh. Favorite restaurant in the past growing up would have been Big Boy. I think we went to the Big Boy, felt like every Sunday after church. After church, met at Big Boy. My favorite Detroit dish, though, would be the Coney dog.
Okay.
No matter how many, no matter how many places I've gone to around the world, and had big fancy dishes. Whenever I come home, I try to make my way to get a Detroit Coney dog. And growing up too, one of my other favorite dishes as a kid was just barbecue. We had, I think it was Sim's Barbecue right there on Mac, where it had some of the best barbecue in the city. And then Milt's Barbecue over there on the east side as well used to be one of the favorite food landmarks in the city. So past restaurant would be Big Boy, and then just kind of present foods in Detroit would be both the Coney Island and then some Detroit ribs.
Okay.
Okay.
Sounds good.
Sounds good.
All right, number
All right,
three.
number 3.
Downtown event.
Event.
And that will be
That would
festivals,
be festivals,
fireworks,
parades,
auto show,
show,
but it has to be
but it has
downtown
to be
only.
only.
I don't think they do it anymore, but growing up, it was the jazz festival downtown. They used to have all the festivals down there at Hart Plaza, and that was always my favorite thing to do. The weekends, all of my cousins, we'd go downtown and hang out at the Jazz Fest because you didn't have to have any money and you could still have a good time. Going downtown to be right there on the riverfront, and you see a ton of people out. I never really enjoyed the fireworks, and I think it was mainly just because of the crowd. It was so hard to get down there. You had to get downtown so early, and then when it was over, it seemed like as a kid, it took hours to finally, crawl through traffic to get out of downtown.
Yeah.
That the fireworks never did it for me, but all the festivals that we used to have downtown were definitely the highlight as a kid.
Awesome. All right, number 4. Now you kind of touched on this, so we're gonna force you to give us an answer though. Your favorite Detroit sports team?
Pistons. That was easy.
Bad
boys.
Yeah.
I was there at the Palace in 1989 for that first championship when we beat the Lakers, and just the joy that brought to the city was exhilarating. I remember being at the Palace, and when the final seconds ticked off the clock, folks that total strangers turned around hugging each other. Me and my friends and I were freshmen in college, and I remember leaving the Palace and driving downtown, being on Woodward Avenue. Everybody had our brooms out. We're jumping out of the car, sweeping the ground because we had just swept the Lakers.
Yeah.
And literally, in all my years of being from Detroit and living in Detroit, I don't think I ever remember a time where the city just felt that unified.
Yeah.
It's kind of like how the country felt after 9/11, but it was the whole city of Detroit just rallying around the Pistons. And that's why to this day, my favorite sports players of all time is that Bad Boys team. Isaiah Thomas, Joe Dumars, Dennis Rodman, Bill Laimbeer, all of those guys, John Sally, because they just did something for the city that is hard to duplicate. Even the championships that we won after that, with Chauncey Billups and all those, Rip Hamilton, those were amazing as well. But the one that very first one in 1989 with the Detroit Bad Boys was something special. So the Pistons haven't been great the last few years, but I'm still a diehard Pistons fan, and I'll be right there cheering until they come back to the top and celebrating when they are on top.
Did you go to the parades too?
Yeah, went to the parades. Yeah, went to the parades. Everything Bad Boys around that time. Had all the Bad Boy T-shirts. Definitely was there.
Yeah, I went to the parades. I think when we beat the Trailblazers the second time, we did the Palace Vision. So we didn't go to the actual game, but when they were away, we got to go to the Palace and watch. So those were very pivotal moments in my childhood. All right.
And that's all we did too, was the Palace Vision. I couldn't afford a ticket to get to the game.
Right. It was pretty pricey.
$10, yeah, so it felt like a crowd watching it with us.
Right. Awesome times. And then number 5, the last one, your favorite Detroit memory. Now, let me clarify. This for you would be a memory that's so Detroit, you can't classify it as anything else.
Favorite Detroit memory. Man, that's a tough one.
Stumped you.
Favorite Detroit memory. Well, this one, and it's not a memory for me because I wasn't alive at the time. It was a couple of years before me. But through the vehicle of history and documentaries, I'm a history buff. So kind of going back, watching the 68 riots and just understanding what a pivotal time that was in our country and just how Detroit played such a significant role. and realizing just how alive and well racism was in our hometown in 1968. And I was born 2 years later in 1970. And my entire life, I mean, obviously there's still been racism in my lifetime, and there's still racism alive and well today. But to realize that I was born, so close to a time when our city was basically being burned down because of the race riots. That's a memory that stands out. And it's a constant reminder to me to never stop fighting for what's right. Because I think that whole period in our country, the civil rights period, is so special because you had people that were willing to risk life, limb, reputation, and everything, not even for their benefit, but for the benefit of their kids and their grandkids and just society as a whole. And I think just right now where our country is, we're so divided. And it's easy to point fingers as to whose fault it is and the reason why we're in the place that we are. I think the one thing that we can all do is learn a lesson that, number one, we have to love people beyond the color of their skin. But also we have to not be silent. It's easy to kind of look at stuff on the news or internet and say, well, it doesn't really have anything to do with me personally. And a lot of people in the civil rights era, weren't personally persecuted or crucified by some of the things that were going on, but they realized that other people were being mistreated. And so for me, that stands out. It's not a memory during my time, but it was just before my time. And every time I go back and reflect on it, it's uniquely Detroit. Other things happen in, Selma, Alabama, Birmingham, and other places, Mississippi. But for a Midwest northern city to experience that was something that I believe it really changed the course of the civil rights movement, right there in our hometown of Detroit.
That's really profound. That's probably the most unique answer we've gotten on that question. I really appreciate that. That was really good. Thank you so much. I'm so sad now because we're at the end, but it has been a pleasure. I am so excited to share this with the audience. We've taken a little bit of a break for the beginning of the summer, but we're going to be right back at it, and you're going to be the first new episode. So congrats to you. And so I'm just going to wrap it up there. I know you've got things to do and places to be. And thank you so much again, Bishop George L. Davis of Impact Church, Jacksonville, Florida, but always from the D. Yes. All right. So thank you guys for listening. We'll be back next Friday with the Detroit Hustle Podcast. Bye.